Well, howdy doody, and welcome back to my adventure across the United States, where I'm visiting each state and covering some of the urban legends and local mythology present in the area. We're passing through the United States in alphabetical order as we go along this journey, so make sure you go ahead and check if your state has already been covered, and if not, subscribe and turn on those alerts so that you don't miss it when we do. Today, we're visiting Michigan, the Great Lakes state. To me, Michigan is a beach day. I'm talking a left my phone at home, a nice book in my hand, and an ice cream cone kind of beach day. Despite this, it seems that these thick woods and deep lakes are hiding something because there's a lot of creepy stuff out here. With this in mind, come with me today and let's see what kind of folklore we find in the depths of my new home state. Number 1 is the Nain Rouge. The Nain Rouge is a legendary creature in the folklore of Detroit, Michigan. The name Nain Rouge translates in French to red dwarf, and the creature is often depicted as a small, red devil-like being. The legend of the Nain Rouge is believed to have its roots in early French colonial times, and over the centuries was adopted into Detroit's cultural heritage. In French folklore, there's a lot of small creatures like the Nain Rouge that typically symbolize malevolent spirits or omens that'll bring about some bad times. These French beliefs meshed with those of the Native Americans, which also believe in mischievous spirits or tricksters that disrupt the natural swing of things over time, resulting in the Nain Rouge legend. According to stories, the Nain Rouge appears before tragic events or disasters, foretelling hardship, much like the Mothman, and there are various accounts attributing the Nain Rouge's appearance to a variety of calamities in Detroit's history. Among the many past sightings of the creature prior to a terrible event, there are a few very notable events that occurred back in the day. In 1763, there was supposedly a Nain Rouge sighting near the Detroit River, and the next day, July 30th, the Battle of Bloody Run between the British and natives in the area during the French-Indian War took place in the area, killing over 60 people. Additionally, in 1805, the Nain Rouge was seen walking down the streets of Detroit by multiple people, only for the majority of Detroit to burn down a few months later. More recently, in March of 1976, 2 utility workers said they saw a small devil climbing up a utility pole, and a short while later, Detroit was hit with one of the worst ice storms it had ever seen. Sadly, it seems this might have been the last time the Little Red Devil was ever seen. To celebrate, and perhaps to show some respect to this little scary creature's history, the city each year holds the Marche du Nain Rouge, a parade and celebration aimed at banishing the Nain Rouge and bringing some good luck to the city. The celebration has become a big local tradition that embraces the folklore and the city's resilience to adversity that, in the past, threatened to end Detroit for good. Given the little devil hasn't appeared for a while, though, I'd say the celebration is doing a good job of holding him at bay. But I know for certain that next time I find myself in Detroit and I see a little red bugger running around, I'll be making a dash for my car and making my way out of the city. Number 2 is the Michigan Dogman. If you ever spent time as a young man in Michigan in the 2000s, then you've probably heard about the legend of the Dogman. In Michigan, I feel like most of the wild stuff inhabits the Upper Peninsula, but despite this, the legend of the Dogman calls the Lower Peninsula its home, dating back to the late 1800s and continuing to scare the young and old alike to this day. Now, we've covered dogmen before on this channel, and the concept is pretty intuitive. In short, it's a hybrid creature with a dog's head and a man's body that sort of resembles a dog or a wolf. You can find these bad boys in the woods of the Lower Peninsula, and there are a lot of notable sightings in the Manistee National Forest area if you're curious. The Dogman's first documented sighting was from 1887 when many folks in Wexford County saw an odd-looking wolf that occasionally stood on 2 legs while roaming the area. It was said to be about 7 feet tall on 2 legs, to have blue eyes, and have a howl that sounded like someone screaming. There was also a sighting in Paris, Michigan in 1937 when a man was attacked by wild dogs, and he claimed that one of these dogs was walking on 2 legs. There were similar reports of a dog walking on 2 legs in Allegan County in 1957 and another in Manistee and Cross Village in 1967. Sightings of the Dogman, though unverified, have generally occurred approximately every 10 years, creating the legend that there's a 10-year cycle to the Dogman's appearance, with the Dogman appearing in years that end in 7s. Now, as you'd expect, there's a lot of hoodoo voodoo out there about the Dogman. It's so popular that there's songs, art, and even YouTube films devoted to it. If you've ever watched the channel Darkness Prevails too, you'll find that the Dogman is also a common character over there and on similar channels. There's even an annual Dogman sighting convention in Michigan that bounces around the state and location every year. Now, if you're looking to see this creature for yourself, it sounds like all you need to do is go for a hike. And if you want to optimize your chances, I suggest the northwestern quadrant of the lower peninsula. Just beware though, that thing you see on two legs, it might not be a fellow hiker. Number 3 is the Bath School disaster and its subsequent hauntings. So to be clear, if you're looking for a happy story, this one isn't it. This story includes death, including that of children, so please look at the description to skip to the next story if you can't handle all that. Bath Charter Township houses the Bath School. It's about 10 miles away from the capital of Michigan, Lansing, and Bath was a small town that was unincorporated, and its economy was mainly based around agriculture. The Bath School disaster was an attack made by an individual named Andrew Kehoe, who was the school board treasurer in the Bath Charter Township of Michigan in 1927. In 1926, a new tax was levied against property owners in the township, and Andrew took this personally. So personally, in fact, that he began buying incremental quantities of an explosive called pyrrolitol, and began transporting them to the school and burying them. He was also known to have purchased dynamite at sporting goods stores in the area, because of course you could buy explosives in a sporting goods store in the 1920s, claiming he was using the explosives to blow up tree stumps on his properties, and nobody batted an eye. This all changed, however, in May of 1927 when Andrew set off explosions that ended the lives of 38 children, 6 adults, and himself. Following the attack, there was international outcry and sympathy for the community, which was given money by the government to rebuild the school at a new location in town. Eventually, a park was built where the old Bath School stood, and according to visitors, some of the old school children can still be found there. Visitors at this park claim that they've heard voices and cries for help. They also feel cold air in the park, which, to be fair, is pretty normal in Michigan. Another common feeling is that of feeling like you're being touched by an invisible hand while visiting the park. That one is not normal in Michigan. There's also reports that a nearby funeral home where many of the victims of the attack were taken and prepared for burial is also haunted. Nowadays, this funeral home is an apartment, and one of the tenants in the year 2000 had odd experiences there. Of course, there's the classic, I feel like I'm being watched stuff in the home, but beyond that, she heard footsteps going up and down stairs that had been demolished years earlier, so she heard footsteps on stairs that didn't exist. She heard crying, she heard toilets flushing and faucets going on and off, and perhaps the creepiest, she heard a child sobbing and crying. One night, in her basement, she heard a window break. This final event prompted her to call the police, but supposedly, when they arrived, the officers refused to go down to the basement, where she heard it break. Eventually, this all got creepier because instead of just seeing the ghost of a little boy named George Hall, he died in the explosion, this boy started bugging her cat and eventually talking to her. The tenant also interacted with other spirits that died in the attack later on. Number 4 is the Mishipeshu. The Great Lynx, the underwater panther, whatever you call it, the Mishipeshu is a creature that inhabits the folklore of many Native American tribes which called Michigan and the Great Lakes areas their homes. Now, as you'd expect from this series, we're not talking about some everyday feline. This creature is a supernatural kitty that is supposedly very powerful, with a large body and other characteristics such as scales, serpent-like qualities, and horns. These scales and serpent qualities probably present themselves because the Mishipeshu is characterized as some sort of spirit of the Great Lakes, and sometimes specifically of Lake Superior. The Mishipeshu, because of this, is often painted as a creature in opposition to the Thunderbird, which we talked about when we did our episode on Maine's folklore. Now, unlike Bigfoot-like cryptids, this kitty isn't just going to sneak up and attack you. No, it's too powerful for that. Rather, it's more likely to cause harsh weather that creates dangerous waters for sailing, whirlpools, strong currents, and even storms. Often, if natives found themselves caught up in one of these conditions on the Great Lakes, it was certainly the Mishipeshu's fault. Regarding encounters with this creature, there are actually a few notable instances. In the 1850s, an ethnographer, Johann George Cole, spoke with a Native American chief, Fond du Lac, and in this conversation, he was somehow shown a strand of copper that Fond du Lac kept in his medicine bag. Fond du Lac claimed that this wasn't actually a strand of copper, though. It was actually a strand of hair from the Mishipeshu, and this links back to the folklore that, in addition to being a water spirit, the Mishipeshu hoards or guards copper in the Great Lakes region, and because of this, this was considered dangerous to take copper from the region. And this prior story links very well to the next one, when a Jesuit missionary, Claude de Blon, told the story about some natives who embarked to the Mishipeshu Island, the supposed home of the Mishipeshu, to get copper to bring home so they could more efficiently heat water. Apparently, with this intention in mind, they were doomed. The moment they pushed off of the water with their canoe, they heard eerie voices, and then the Mishipeshu itself came out of the water to scold them. They docked their canoe again to head back to the village, but at that point it was too late. 3 of them died on the way there, with the 4th living just long enough to tell his tale to the village. So if you want to see this cryptid yourself, maybe head out on the lakes with the intention of grabbing some copper from the Mishipeshu Island. My money says you'll probably just tip over your canoe on the way there, but if you're lucky, or perhaps unlucky, you'll be greeted by the water spirit itself. Number 5 is the ghost of the old Presque Lighthouse. The old Presque Lighthouse is located in Presque, Michigan, and it holds a significant place in the state's maritime history. Constructed in 1840 by the Army Corps of Engineers, it was one of the first lighthouses built on the Great Lakes. The lighthouse was built to guide ships safely along Lake Huron and to protect them from treacherous reefs and shoals near Presque Isle. In 1870, this lighthouse was replaced by a taller, brighter, new Presque Isle lighthouse, but the old lighthouse remains, despite having its use discontinued, remaining as housing for lighthouse keepers. Nowadays, the old Presque Isle Lighthouse is a historic site and museum, offering visitors the opportunity to explore the site and possibly run into a few phantoms along the way. One of these phantoms is George Paris. George was supposedly the first lighthouse keeper of the old Presque Isle Lighthouse in the mid-19th century. According to local legends, he died unexpectedly at the lighthouse, and those same legends say he never left. Visitors and staff members have reported hearing unexplained footsteps, seeing shadowy figures, and feeling a sense of unease inside of the lighthouse. When they feel this, they say that it's the first lighthouse keeper wandering his old haunt. To my dismay, I may have to burst their bubble though. The odds of George existing, or at least being named George, is quite slim, because there's no historical evidence of any George working at the lighthouse, according to historians. So obviously there was a first lighthouse keeper, but whoever it was, it doesn't look like anything eventful happened to them, or that they were named George. Despite this, there's still plenty of claimed activity at the lighthouse. A commonly reported apparition at the old Presque Isle Lighthouse is that of a woman in a blue dress. Witnesses say this woman walks the lighthouse grounds, peering out from the windows. Some suggest that she might have been a former keeper's wife, but there's no records to back this up. Whoever she is, folks claim that when they see her, they feel cold air and a sense of longing, and because of this, they say that maybe she's someone searching or waiting for someone who never will return. And finally, the old Presque Isle Lighthouse, despite being shut down, is known to occasionally foster the appearance of a phantom light. Now sadly, this isn't the lighthouse light itself flashing, but rather a light that moves around within the lighthouse or on the shore of the coast of the lighthouse. This light has been witnessed by numerous individuals over the years, appearing to move around the lighthouse tower or along the shoreline. This legend is sort of connected to the legend of the first lighthouse keeper, saying that he's still going about his job even from beyond the grave. Thank you all for joining me today on this summer stroll through the Great Lakes State. Whether you be a copper thief or a hiker, it seems like Michigan isn't safe for you, because these ghouls and cryptids are hanging out everywhere. Now, as I said in my last video, I'm making these videos for free, but if you'd like to change that at no cost to you, I'd appreciate if you liked this video, subscribed to my channel, and turned on notifications. That way you won't miss the journey through our next state, Minnesota, which I am happy to report I am not moving to, unlike the last transition. Not that I have anything against Minnesota, I'm just sick of moving. But remember, most importantly, whether you saw a little red gnome walk by in downtown Detroit, or if you heard a child running around your apartment when you're the only one home, don't you ever forget, it's always story time.